students. Welcome to the second part of Introduction to the Writer, Adrienne Rich. In the first part, we discussed how, from a very formal kind of writer, she turned into a radical writer and she spoke on issues related to politics, anti war, and social justice. Now, in this part, we are going to discuss rest of her works and how she has been received. When it comes to acknowledgements, Adrian Rich has received many acknowledgements, including a number of awards and special mentions and so on. So, in addition to the National Book Award, Rich received many awards and commendations for her work, including the Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize, the Lennon Lifetime Achievement Award, the Bollingen Prize, the Academy of American Poets Fellowship, and a MacArthur Genius Award. She made headlines in 1997 when she refused the National Medal of Arts for political reasons. She said, and I quote, I could not accept such an award from President Clinton or this White House, she wrote in a letter published in the New York Times, because the very meaning of art, as I understand it, is incompatible with the cynical politics of this administration. Now, just see, uh, you might find it quite contradictory in a way that on one side, she's being given a number of awards, she accepts them also. But on the other side, she refused one particular award, and that was National Medal of Arts, and that clearly too for political reasons. So you can see what kind of a person she was. That if she did not agree with, or if she did not like how administration was handling things, and especially its view towards uh, arts or overall political view about the things that were happening in the country. She was not afraid to deny, or she was not afraid to say, go along with the administration, and just for the sake of greater acknowledgement, accept a prize bestowed upon her. When it comes to such a strong personality like Adrienne Rich, obviously we might be curious about her background, where she came from, and her upbringing. So, her upbringing, you may see, had all the elements of making somebody uh, an intellectual. All the possible things were there that she could have asked for. She was born in 1929 in Baltimore, Maryland, and her father was a renowned pathologist and a professor at Johns Hopkins. That's a big name in US and elsewhere. Her mother was a former concert pianist. Rich's upbringing was dominated by the intellectual ambitions her father had for her, and Rich excelled at academics, earning a degree from Radcliffe University. In 1953, she married Alfred Conrad, an economics professor at Harvard. She had three children with him, but their relationship began to fray in the 1960s as Rich became politically aware. She later said, the experience of motherhood was eventually to radicalize me. Though this statement might look a little cryptic, but you may see that she went through domestic life. She brought up her children also, but gradually, uh, with her growth and inclination towards politics, she could understand that an ordinary domestic life was not really for her, and it was not really working. Work of the 1960s and 70s begins to show the signs of that radicalization. Now, a lot has been said about that radicalization. And as we move on, we will talk about this radicalization. Moving her family in New York in 1966, richest collections from this period include Necessities of Life, 1966, Leaflets, 1969, and The Will to Change, 1971, all of which feature looser lines and radical political content. David Jugar, a poet and critic, described the change in Rich's work as this, and I quote, the 20-year-old author of painstaking, decorous poems that are eager to maturely accept the world they are given becomes a poet of prophetic intensity and visionary anger, bitterly unable to feel at home in a world that gives no room to what we dreamt of being. Now, here, Joga puts it very aptly. And here, uh, in what he has said, you can easily see that how Rich transformed from, say, from a very basic, ordinary poet to somebody who was radical and to somebody who became radical. And you can also see that where exactly lies that radicalness. Now, the first approach in her beginning works was to, like any other new poet, was to mature, to sound mature and to seem to accept the world as it is. But as you go on, you realize that this world that you're trying to accept is not really acceptable the way it works. And gradually that thing grows on as it happened with Rich, and she could see it and she could pin it out, pinpoint it, that why exactly she was not really happy with the things the way they are, and most of her anger or bitterness lies in the fact that primarily it was because of these political reasons and all kinds of political things that were happening that were making the world a wrong kind of a place to live in. Now, her husband, Conrad, died in 1970, and 6 years later, Rich moved in with her long-term partner, Michelle Cliff. That same year, she published her controversial, influential collection of essays of women-born motherhood as institution and experience, 1976. The volume, following on the heels of her masterpiece, diving into the wreck, ensured Rich's place in the feminist pantheon. Now, if you look at the title of this collection of essays of Women Born, Motherhood as Institution and Experience, you can see somebody who who is able to who is able to clearly perceive how marriage, motherhood, everything has been turned into a sort of institution that serves the needs of the power structures and the uh, especially the patriarchy. Now, why would somebody call motherhood as an institution? Because whenever we talk about motherhood, the things that are attached with it are are very emotional and very often, not just emotional, they are of responsibility, as if, you know, women were born for this purpose of motherhood. And it is this kind of mental conditioning which hampers, which may hamper the growth of women as an individual. And in these essays, she compares how the experience of the motherhood vis-a-vis motherhood as an experience vis-a-vis as an institution worked for her. Which was criticized by some for her harsh depictions of men. However, the work she produced during this period is often seen as her finest. In Miss Erica Jong noted that Rich is one of the few poets who can deal with political issues in her poems without letting them degenerate into social realism. Focusing on the title poem, Jong also denies that Rich is anti-male. A portion of the poem reads, and I quote, "And I am here, the mermaid whose dark hair streams black, the merman in his armored body. We circle silently about the wreck, we dive into the hold. I am she, I am he." Jong commented, "This stranger, poet survivor, carries a book of myths in which his names do not appear. These are the old myths that perpetuate the battle between the sexes. Implicit in Rich's image of the androgyne is the idea that we must write new myths, create new definitions of humanity, which will not glorify this ordinary chasm, but heal it." Here, it is very interesting to note that what Rich is trying to do in her poetry. She's not she's not actually playing in the old field that divided the male and the female, and it was easy to say for anybody, for feminists, that they hate male. They hate males in general, and patriarchy in general. What Rich does is that she points out that the world has changed, and so do we cannot go on repeating the established myths. We need to create new myths. We need to create new definitions of humanity, which would not, broaden this chasm or division between men and women, but somehow it would heal it. Thank you.